Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Private Practice. I'm joined today by Katherine L'Etang, who is also known as the Neurodiversity Mom, a late diagnosed autistic ADHD content creator who has made it her mission to provide community, inclusion, and acceptance to anyone who's autistic or raising autistic kids. She lives in British Columbia, Canada, with her husband and her two kids. And welcome to the show.
Aw, thank you so much, Patrick. Appreciate it. Happy
Yeah,
to be here.
I love your content on social media. So I was up late at night one night a couple weeks ago, and I was like DMing all of the content creators that I really like, asking them if they wanted to come on here. So I appreciate you taking the
Oh,
time to accept that invite.
of course. And yeah, likewise. I feel like a lot of your content I really like relate to. So I feel like our uh ADHD experience, at least from what I see on content, is like pretty similar. So yeah, so it's pretty yeah, it's great to be here. Great to chat.
I love the awkwardness that we often have with introductions and like the social, as my friend Megan Anna would call it, social ligamenting of like trying to navigate what to say, when to say it. And I am that way when we're doing intros and bios and farewells. So um, I want to talk to you about your journey with this because it sounds like you discovered autism and ADHD later in life.
Mhm.
How old were you when that happens? Like, what's going on in your world when that's happening?
For sure. So, I was diagnosed with ADHD first which I've actually come to realize as like a lot of women, um, kind of a similar thing. Saw a lot of ADHD content on social media, and then I went to my doctor and asked about an assessment, and the doctor referred me on to a psychiatrist. And I was kind of met with like, oh, this is like such a trend at the moment on
Oh,
social media, blah, blah, blah. And then he started kind of doing the questions and things. And then he was like, actually, I do think you may have ADHD. And I was like, uh-huh, yeah. So anyway, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I think I went on stimulants then. And like a lot of autistic or late diagnosed autistic people, once I started the stimulants, I definitely had a lot more like autistic traits. And it's actually my husband who always like he is ADHD like diagnosed in childhood, and he would often be like, because my ADHD presentation is very different to him. So he would be like, I don't know if you have ADHD, but I think you do have autism. So I think he was often suggesting that, but I feel like I was often just like, me, no. And eventually, after about a year later, after my ADHD diagnosis, I got more comfortable with the idea that I was also autistic, and I sought an evaluation. And yeah, I was diagnosed with autism at 32. Yeah,
okay. So yeah, similar trajectory, I guess, because ADHD for me came first when
yeah,
I was about 31, and then autism was around 35. And
yeah,
the ADHD thing for me, I didn't really think much of it. I just kind of was like, yeah, that makes sense for me. It checks the boxes. It never answered the questions though that I had about why I was experiencing life the way I was experiencing. I always just felt so, we hear so often people say, I feel like an alien. I feel like I don't have a manual on how to do life. I feel like everyone else knows the rules except for me. And I
yeah.
definitely resonated with that. It sounds like you did as well.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And that's the thing. It was funny because people brought up the alien thing, and I was like, I don't feel like an alien, but that's because my literal brain is like alien.
Yes, exactly.
And then, but that is actually a perfect description of like almost like you crash landed on the planet and everyone else had this manual of how to be human. And you kind of are watching and making the manual yourself, like
Yeah.
that's my autistic experience is like, okay, that's what we do then. And
Yeah.
where everyone else just had that manual like downloaded and auto populated in their brains.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting. I want to go back to what your psychiatrist said because it sounds like in that moment, and correct me if I'm wrong, that could have gone from a very invalidating experience to a maybe somewhat validating experience. I don't know how the rest of that assessment went, but like when we hear the word this is a trend or everyone is a little bit autistic or everyone is a little bit ADHD, that stuff is really minimizing of the actual lived experiences that we're having, right? And it's unfortunate that we still have so many medical and psychiatric and mental health providers who just opt into that philosophy of like, this is more of a trend. We're just seeing an epidemic. These words are harmful and they do cause impact. They do cause a ripple effect for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And so actually because of after that experience, for my autism evaluation, I was like, I'm not going to my doctor. I don't want to be referred into
Yep.
the Canadian public healthcare system, which is great. We love it, but it has its challenges, especially with
Sure.
like mental health and that kind of stuff. So I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm going privately. I'm going to research my assessor. Like, I'm going to do my homework because I cannot, I was already, I think that's the thing with a lot of late diagnosed people. We're already invalidating ourselves.
Yeah.
So by going to a professional that's potentially also going to invalidate you, it's like that is just not what I'm looking for. That's going to
Yeah.
be super harmful. Like ADHD, like you said, was kind of one of those things that's like, yeah, it makes sense. Autism, I knew for me was going to be like fundamentally, like totally life changing and life altering of understanding myself in that way. So I was like, I need to do this properly.
Sure. That's really well said. And I think it's also a very common experience. I just actually had a psychologist on 2 episodes ago in the UK, and she was talking about how she's offering assessments and their public healthcare system. And some people are waiting upwards of 4 years to get an assessment, potentially more. You just mentioned the Canadian healthcare system, and I would say that both UK and Canadian healthcare systems are light years better than the American healthcare system, where everything is privatized and everything is for profit. But I like that you also did the very autistic thing of like, I'm going to deep dive the assessor. I am going to go down every rabbit hole because
Yeah.
when it has so much to do with identity, it's like everything feels like it's at stake. And you almost start even questioning yourself as you're doing all this autistic research, which should be a green flag for us anyway, of like, I'm going to deep dive the hell out of this to make sure I get the right fit. And I know who this person is and what their credentials are and all the things. And then we can still have these moments of invalidation throughout of like, but you're not autistic enough. You didn't really meet the criteria. It's just a trend. That stuff can really become overwhelming and unbelievably dismissive of our experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what's so funny about me. It's like I have like my ADHD domains or my autism domains. So sometimes I'm incredibly impulsive and I'm just like, I
Mhm.
just need to get this done or
Yep.
whatever. And then
Yep.
other things I am rabbit hole, like we need to like know everything about everything. And you really don't know what you're going to get and what domain is covering which when. But I'm glad, at least for my autism diagnosis, I wasn't just like, let's do this thing because, yeah, I really did need to make sure that it was like handled with a lot of care. And I wanted the most robust, like, and that's the thing. I mean, I believe self diagnosis is valid. I believe if you do an online assessment, that's valid. It's whatever suits you and works for you and whatever you can do. But
Right.
for me, I knew I wanted an in person assessment. Even though the ADOS is questionable, I still wanted an ADOS. I wanted like, I there were so many things that I felt I needed in order to believe that I was actually autistic and to give
Yeah.
myself the grace and the accommodations that I really needed, which is wrong. I mean, you shouldn't have to, I shouldn't have had to have needed someone else's confirmation in order to give that to myself. But that's the way my people pleasing brain works. And
Sure.
yeah, that's how we did things.
Okay. So then that happens. You go through that entire
Yeah.
process, you get the results. And then what? How does that like
Yeah.
I think I thought it was like this aha epiphany moment for myself, but then
Yeah.
I quickly realized that I started to experience such an intensification of all of my autistic traits all at once. And it felt very flooding in terms of like sensory sensitivity started to feel like unbearable. Burnout felt so intensified and magnified. Everything started to culminate. And I was like, wait, I thought things were supposed to get easier. And in reality, I think that's a common misconception for people, but it was definitely unbelievably illuminating. And it kind of
Mhm.
started to answer questions for me from this different lens that I had been searching for my entire life.
Yeah, my autism diagnosis blew up my entire life, but for the better, I had constructed the most perfect mask. I was a suburban mom of two. I worked my corporate job remotely. I'm married, like everything is just like on the outside, life is great. Like, why
Yeah.
am I even going for this assessment, But really, I had actually been going through these burnout cycles for my whole life of essentially like every 3 years ish, just suddenly being like, I can't function and I need to like lie in bed for an extended period and then slowly rebuild. So,
Yeah.
really, my autism diagnosis did throw me into that place, actually, like triggered almost that burnout. But at the same time, um, it's where I needed to go in order to truly accept myself and recover as an autistic person instead of like putting the mask back on. So it
Absolutely.
was, yeah. So it was basically like once I got my diagnosis, same thing. I suddenly couldn't wear makeup anymore. Like suddenly makeup felt so uncomfortable. Certain clothes I couldn't wear. Like I literally, it just was like a forced like exposure therapy and being autistic almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, I basically then kind of from there, I quit my job because I had to take like a medical leave from work and they would only give me 3 weeks. Like I just couldn't go back to working a corporate job and being in like meetings where, there's those social pleasantries and all of that, which always felt so foreign to me and so hard. But suddenly, once I was diagnosed, it was like impossible. It wasn't just hard. It was like something I could no longer play or do or mask. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I quit my job and was already had started the journey on social media of like kind of sharing my journey. But it was at a point where I was starting to get brand deals and all of that. And I was like, I'm gonna quit and we're just gonna see where life goes. So
Well,
I think ADHD domain kicked in then with the quitting, but also I just
so
think I didn't really have a choice with with my autistic experience. But yeah, kind of never look back, I suppose.
yeah, I mean, I love hearing that, and I think that happens to a lot of people in these spaces, especially those of us who are maybe um, entrepreneurial or content creators or
Yeah.
sharing our lives and our stories online. So that brings me to a next question. So a lot of what you talk about online is like the parenting component, and you mentioned having two kids and trying really hard to advocate for them and their needs as well. What's that like to be on that in this space now and sharing a lot of this like very intimate public information with the world and trying to really help people feel less alone?
Yeah. So fuck, I'm glad you asked that because that's actually something I've been like seriously like wrestling with too. Like, because I feel like it's one thing for me, like I share a lot of my own public stuff because I feel like my public healing is almost like collective healing. So I feel like that's the way I look at it. But yeah, when it comes to my kids, I feel like I've actually reined in a lot of the information I share because, yeah, so I'm a mom of two autistic kids, well, ADHD kids as well. And my account started as more of like this parenting thing. And then it was somewhere when I started my account, I had my own realization and we kind of, I pivoted a lot to sharing a lot about me. But, um, my kids are so obsessed with like YouTube, wanting to be YouTubers, blah, blah, blah. They love that I have Instagram, but I really do question I always towing this line of like how much I'm sharing about them and what they're okay with and what they can consent to, which is honestly nothing. They're little, they're seven,
Right.
6 and 7.
Sure.
I don't share their faces well, I do sometimes from the side. I don't share their names. But at the same time, it's very hard to wrestle with like what's okay to share and like what isn't. But then at the same time, when I feel like the stuff I do share from parenting is really helpful for a lot of people and makes people feel so validated and seen and also helps me in a way of processing and dealing with this because in so many ways I feel like our society has failed disabled people parents of disabled children, because that help isn't really there. And so, so
Yeah.
many of us do turn to social media for this kind of support or community or to be seen and all of that. So I feel like I'm in this place where I'm just constantly wrestling like, what is appropriate? What isn't appropriate? Like, is this too much? It's probably that autistic like rabbit hole, but I think it's valid questions that need to be asked more, like what is okay and what is the point of like this is too much, and what is helpful. I don't think I have the answers clearly, but it is something I'm always at least I guess asking myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great response. And I think for a lot of us who are sharing our lives with the hopes that our experiences help other people,
Yeah.
there's a layer of vulnerability and exposure in that. And also just being perceived is
Yeah.
messy at times. So it's a great thing to just be always thinking about. But I think it also has such a ripple effect and an impact. So a lot of us are wrestling with that. Like, how much impact is this having in terms of helping, and how much is this hurting? And I think that's something to constantly be thinking about, especially as we are more and more open on social media. So you are also writing a book, right? Is that right?
Yeah, so it's actually done. So I just submitted my manuscript like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So it's with an imprint of Penguin, which is like really cool. It's like it's a it's a it's a thing, like it's crazy. So yeah, this year is going to be nuts. It's going to be like recording the audiobook, all of that, but at
Yeah.
least this book is about late diagnosis. So it is about my experience. I was also very conscious of that, of what I'm putting in the book. For me, I have almost zero shame personally. So there's definitely a lot of personal like stories that I'm just kind of like, throwing
Sure.
it out there. Yeah, the ADHD domain covers my shame sharing apparently, because I'm just like, whatever. Um but yeah, there's one chapter on parenting, and talking about parenting and advocacy and all of that. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. All of last year was writing the book as well as a cross country move,
Right.
which is like I don't understand how I'm not like severely burnt out, but apparently we're just doing it. And yeah, like I'm just rolling with life. And I think a lot of it has to do with this entrepreneurial journey that I'm on, which I'm sure you can relate to, of like, you know, there's something about when you're your own boss. It's like not just about being in control of your schedule. It's literally also just about not having that person that you're needing to please or answer to.
Yeah.
That is probably been one of the most disabling factors of working for other people or whatever. It's been like this idea of having this like boss that how am I doing a good job? Do they like me? Am I, falling behind? Because I think we struggle so much to read people's cues
Yeah.
that we're constantly guessing. And that for me is what I think often catapulted my burnout, was just the constant needing to figure out what everyone is thinking or what they think of me or how I'm doing, how I'm being perceived. Like all of that is just like that was one of the hardest parts. So taking that away is just huge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very well said. And I agree with that. I mean, it's exhausting to constantly be like trying to figure out how to belong and fit in and do a good job and read all the cues. So very well said. Um, as we're getting ready to wrap up, can you tell us a little bit more about like when the book might come out? What's it called? Any of that stuff? If people want to pre-order or any of that information?
Yeah, so the book is called Actually I'm Autistic. So, yeah.
So
And
bad.
it's coming out actually only in the fall. So, still a little while. I'm not sure when pre orders are coming out, but yeah, it's super exciting. But yeah, for now, I'm still just, sharing on social media. And that's where the journey is still kind of at. And yeah, just seeing where life takes me. It feels like every single week there's some kind of new thing going on. So,
Well, that's cool. I mean, it sounds like what you're putting into the world is feeling really helpful and really useful for people. And that's incredible. I mean, I'm in a position as well right now where I'm writing a book, and I'd say it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, if I'm being very honest. Like, I question myself every single day.
yeah.
Um, and I just have to keep anchoring into like trying to be helpful to people, make things relatable, having people normalize experiences that they might feel really alone in. And
Yeah.
yeah, so my book is also called So You're Autistic, Now What?
Oh,
And
awesome. There we go.
yeah, so it's coming out March of 27. I'm with imprint of Hachette. So I
Oh,
know the grind big
yeah.
time. So congrats on that. And keep us posted as it gets closer. And we'll happily share on our platform. And I'll absolutely read your book and support you that way, because I think
Thank
that's what
you.
this is all about, right? Is like supporting each other through the journey and through the creation. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, hugely
And
important.
likewise, yeah, that's how I feel too, honestly. Like, I feel like in terms of our community, like, I know there can be like a lot of division and stuff in the autism community. That's a whole other podcast episode. But I
Mhm.
really feel like, I personally find like there's so much good in all of us, like understanding each other and being seen by each other and,
Absolutely.
supporting each other. And that's truly like what I think my place is in the community is, like I want us all to support each other. And yeah, I think it's just awesome. So yeah,
Well
reach out
said.
anytime for anything.
Yeah, likewise. Well, thank you so much for coming on and making the time and spending a little bit of your week with us, and really, really appreciate it. And if people want to find you and connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yep. Probably still just Instagram. So it's Instagram.com/the neurodiversity mom.
Cool. And we'll have that in the show notes for all of you, so you have access to everything Katherine talked about today. And so you can keep an eye on when that book comes out as well. Thanks again for coming on and making the time. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Patrick. It was great.
And to everyone listening to All Things Private Practice, new episodes are out on Saturdays on all major platforms and YouTube. Like, download, subscribe, share. Doubt yourself. Do it anyway. We'll see you next week.